Shalom. All praises to the Most High Yah. Bless up to those who are chosen. Generational curses and healing. Those two go hand in hand in a variety of different ways. We're talking about generational curses. Generational curses are something that have been put onto us, usually through our family, through sickness, through mindset, through wealth or disparity. There's a variety of different ways that generational curses happen. It could be death happening uh, in a number of ways. And the only way to break a generational curse is to get into a mindset of healing. How do you get to healing? Well, healing takes accountability. The thing about accountability is you have to look at yourself. And one of the hardest things for us to do is to look at ourselves, the mirror, right? Looking at the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror. That's where healing actually begins. So when we're talking about the actual steps of healing, that's how we break the chains of generational curses. Generational curses can only be broken by those who recognize the cycle, right? And can admit that the family has stagnated because of this cycle. So from that, that becomes the black sheep a lot of the time in the family. And within your own relationships, you getting with somebody who you care about. One of the things about generational curses is you actually attract the trauma that you came from. So a lot of the time what you end up seeing is people who get into relationships are attracting people who are very familiar to them, that remind them of different family members. So what ends up happening within these generational traumas that we have, which is very spiritual, because these different spells that have been put onto these family members or to these generational curses can only be broken through fasting, through prayer, through spiritual growth, to understanding who you are. Deuteronomy, in the book of Deuteronomy, it talks about generational curses that were put onto the people of Yisrael, Israel. The thing about that is, the more that you understand what the curse actually is, right? Us being put into slavery, us having our riches taken away from us, our children being put into slavery, us being sent over by ships. All of that goes in to who they were before. That's why history is important. Who were the Moors before? Who were the Hebrews before? Who were those who ruled the earth before? The thing that we have to understand, because what they say, too much is given, much is acquired, right? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. All those different, sayings that they have. The thing that we have to understand is when we're really getting into a place of healing, we have to admit the wrong that we've done in society, the wrong that we've done as individuals, right? Relationships nowadays, they don't have to end. They can actually continually exist. You can actually be with somebody who betrayed you, have done something to you that hurt you, but it takes accountability from all parties within that situation. We're in the generation where everybody runs from accountability. Everybody runs from responsibility. Everybody runs for their part in the hurt. That's a lot of the problems that we're dealing with when we're talking about parents who can't take accountability for the things that they've gone through, or that the things that they've done to their children. A lot of the time when you go into a parent who is perpetuating trauma, you go into their life, you understand that they had their own trauma and that trauma is being passed down. It takes the black sheep of the family to actually do that inner healing, right? The dark night of the soul is that isolation, that time by yourself, that self-reflection, realization who you are. And then once you actually can see that, you start doing the work. Just because you see it doesn't mean that you're free. You actually have to do the work to become free, right? What does that entail? Well, that entails a lot of spiritual reflection, right? It's not the rituals that get you free in spirituality. That what gets you free is your connection and your love to the source. So the more that you love Abba, the more that you love the source, the more that you can start the journey of healing. To start the journey of healing is a long process. Comes with many failures, many heartaches, hurting people a lot of the time, cutting people off, distancing yourself, not allowing people to continually mistreat you. You're setting boundaries around yourself. That's where healing begins. That's where growth begins. That's where strength begins. So the only way that we can truly get to a place of healing, the only way that we can get to a place of breaking these generational curses is we have to go through the journey of who we are within our pain, how that pain impacted us, what that pain did to us, how it changed us, how it turned us. And then from that, that's how we learn to forgive. Forgive ourselves first. Truly forgiving yourself allows you to forgive another person who may have betrayed you, trespassed you. You have to forgive yourself. So much of the hurt that's in society is why we have people who are reckless within the ways they engage in relationships. It's because there's a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-love. And the more that we love ourselves and we're willing to do that work, the more that will reverberate in our relationships with other people. But it's something that it takes time, and it takes accountability, and it takes self-reflection. So the other thing that I want to say within healing, in the healing process and the ways that healing truly works, is that through the scriptures, the mistakes that you see the prophets make, right? The mistakes that you see that some of the greatest people who lived in the past make. The thing that made them great is their ability to actually recognize who they were outside of everybody else's perspective. See, the thing about perspective is people can put a narrative onto who they want you to be or who they think you are based off of whatever trauma, indoctrination, whatever. And then based off of that, they'll mold you into a character. Now, the thing about that is when you start knowing who you are within that self, that knowledge of self, Hosea 4:6 says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Well, that knowledge is really that knowledge of self. The more that you have that knowledge of self, the more that you don't allow people to identify you as what they want you to be. You become God. You become a reflection of the Most High, of the Creator. In the times we're in, we're looking at narratives. We're looking at the news, whether it be from a Republican or Democratic side, whether it be for different laws that are being passed. We all have our agendas attached to these different ideologies. So we justifiably draw a line in the sand on how we think people should be. A lot of the time, you know right from wrong, but you choose wrong because it feels good. That's just facts. A lot of the time we choose to do the wrong thing, understanding the impacts that it has on us. But because it feels good in the moment, we justifiably do it. In order to heal, it takes discipline. In order to heal, it takes you taking your ego out of the situation. It takes humility. It takes people being able to tell you hard truths and you taking those truths and utilizing those truths to mold who you are and what you want to see your greatest version looking like. When we look at any of the prophets, um, any of the great prophets or speakers or minds or, you know, thought leaders, the one thing that you'll find they all had in common is that they went through a time of tribulation. And through that tribulation, they found themselves. But it took them going through the work that it takes to actually heal themselves and to grow themselves into that version. It takes time, though. It takes time. There's a lot of grown children. There's a lot of grown-ups who stagnated in their age, in their growth at the age of 16, at the age of 17. So they're still perpetuating teenage trauma into their 50s and 60s. And that becomes a reflection on the ways they engage in their relationships. We got to grow. But in order to grow, we got to take accountability. We got to recognize where we're stagnated at. And we can't let that define us. We have to overcome it, overcome the obstacles of what that is. Shalom, I just wanted to get a quick word out to y'all, get some thoughts, some reflections. If you have any topics that you'd like to talk about, build on, hit me up in the comments, comment below on what you vibrate with within what I'm talking about within this healing. I'm going to be doing more of these vlogs, growing them in different ways. I appreciate y'all chiming in. Like, subscribe. Let's grow the channel. Let's build a community. I have a community of sojourners. I call us the sojourners. My name is Sev Sojourner. Y'all the sojourners that want to come on to this journey and go on this spiritual growth with me. So if you're willing to go ahead and join the community. Bless up. Shalom.